time, out of mind. In 2006, a man in his early 20s was seen in a city staring up at a high-rise apartment building. Witnesses described him as looking confused and anxious. They thought he might have been a lost tourist. The man approached two police officers and nervously asked for directions to a place that didn't exist. The officers asked the young man for identification. There were two problems with his ID. One, his documents were issued by a country that no longer existed. The second problem was, according to his birth date, this young man was born in 1932. The man seemed to somehow have slipped in time into the future. Eyewitnesses first saw him standing at an intersection looking confused and also a little frightened. He was described as being in his early 20s and wearing clothes that looked new but were 50 years out of fashion. He was asking everyone he met how to get to a street that no one had heard of. Police officers noticed that he was wearing an antique camera around his neck, which also looked new. But what really caught the officers' attention was his identification. According to the document, he was born in 1932, and that should have made him 74 years old. However, he looked no older than 25. What surprised him most was his identification papers. They were dated in 1958, but they also looked new. They assumed this man was out of his mind, and so they took him to see a psychiatrist. He was duly taken to a private psychiatric clinic, where everything was captured on video. That's when things got really strange. He can be seen on CCTV acting agitated and nervous. The receptionist said when he arrived, he became even more confused. She said, "I remember, he kept looking at my mobile phone, just staring at it. He didn't want to give me his coat, or his camera, or any of his belongings." The concept of time travel has been a staple of science fiction for a long time. In 1770, Louis Sebastian Mercier wrote the book The Year 2440, where the hero travels centuries into the future. A Christmas Carol, written by Charles Dickens in 1843, explored time travel in both directions. But the story that really kicked off the genre was The Time Machine, written by H.G. Wells in 1895. But these are works of fiction. Is time travel really possible? We know that travelling into the future is possible. In 1905, Einstein published his special theory of relativity. He described how moving clocks tick more slowly than stationary ones. The faster you move, the slower time moves. So if you want to travel 100 years into the future, what you do is take a spaceship that can travel at 99.995% the speed of light, then fly somewhere 50 light years away. Turn around and come back to Earth. 100 years will have passed, but because you were going so fast, you have only been away for a year. This theory has been proven in the real world. If you put an extremely accurate clock on a plane and fly it in the same direction that the Earth spins, when you land, that clock will be slightly behind the clocks on Earth. That's special relativity. In 1915, Einstein published his theory of general relativity. This describes gravity as a geometric property of space-time, otherwise known as four-dimensional space, and how space-time is like a fabric or continuum that curves around whatever matter happens to be present. What it boils down to is the higher the gravity, the slower time moves, and this is called gravitational time dilation. GPS satellites are about 12,000 miles above the Earth's surface, so experience less gravity, which means time moves faster up there for them. And so time on the satellites has to be constantly adjusted to match the slower moving time down here on the surface, otherwise GPS wouldn't work. But all of that is about time travel into the future. What about time travel to the past? Not all physicists believe it's possible. Einstein's theories say it is possible, in theory, by bending or warping space-time. But doing something like this would require a tremendous amount of energy, possibly all the energy of an exploding star. So why are we so fascinated with time travel? Maybe it's because time is one of the few things in our lives that is equal for everyone, and that no one can control, no matter how much wealth or power you may accumulate. Eventually time wins. Time travel can make us think of the possibilities of the future, or what may exist after we're gone. Time travel also reminds us of the impossibilities of the past, of decisions made, or mistakes or regrets. How many things in your life would you like to go back and change? There is a trick we can play on ourselves to take back a little bit of control of time. You can look after tomorrow guy or girl. Your future self will say, I'd give anything to go back and make different choices. Well, you're here now. Now is your chance. Be good to your future self by being kinder and by not sweating the small stuff. Time eventually runs out for all of us. And when you get to the end, whether that's next year or 50 years from now, you don't want to look back in your life with regret, saying, I should have done this, or I wish I did that. Don't do that to your future self. When you finally get to the end, your only thought should be, man, that was a hell of a ride.